We are online learning marketplace which teaches skills of the future. So if you struggle with the jargon with Web3, that's exactly how we exist. And we hope to make the space more understandable. We see ourselves as a bridge between Web2 and Web3. Nas Academy was founded by Nas who many of you may know as Nas Daily, with the goal of teaching people how to create better content. And we found a gap with making NFTs and crypto more understandable for the average person on social media. And we've created a bevy of classes with that. So yeah, my experience has been in the space with growth marketing here, but previously worked with Bibaswan at Grab and with Anmol with onboarding mobile messaging tools at a previous company, which was an insurtech company called Singlife. So yeah, glad to be here and happy to connect if you have questions about us getting after this.
Thank you so much. Great having you here. Ravi, over to you.
Hey everyone, I'm Ravi. I'm the CMO of Carsome Group. So Carsome Group is trying to build a trusted used car ecosystem across the region. So we are the e-commerce of cars. We think of Lazada or the Shoppees of the world 10 years ago, where you were skeptical about buying a shoe online, and now you are skeptical about buying a car online delivered to your home. So we're trying to bridge the gap and get into the new world, right? So I take care of the entire marketing, branding, and growth at Carsome. So nice to meet you all.
Hey guys, I'm Bibaswan. I work for Property Guru. I think it's a pretty well-known name in these parts of the world. So right now, of course, Property Guru has its history in being a PropTech marketplace, but the future is very exciting for the group. We are getting into various finance businesses, so Property Guru Finance as we call it, and that's where the next level of growth is going to come from. And being a listed company, in the last 2 months, a lot has changed, and we are chasing very ambitious goals over the next 3-4 years, and that's where my focus is at this point. Previously, I worked with Travel Tech in Klook, Grab with Diane again, and I started my career in telco. And all throughout, it's been on growth marketing, product management, and of course, customer lifecycle management, which is where I crossed paths with Saurav and got to know about MoEngage.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us, Bibaswan. I think with the introductions, you all can fairly imagine the amount of work these guys have done in the back end to try and deliver exceptional experiences, personalization, segmentation, etc. So there's a perfect set of people for today's session. I'll open it up with a more generic question. I think I come across this very often when I speak to brands. Everyone wants to deliver a unique experience in their own sweet way based on the kind of KPIs they're driving, the kind of channels they're using, and the technologies that they have. If you could throw some light on how are you delivering unique experiences in your own way, because you're clearly 3 different types of businesses, that'd be interesting for the audience to start getting deeper into the following questions from there. Diane, you want to pick it up first? How are you all delivering unique experiences? What are some of the efforts that you all are making in that direction?
Yeah, sure. I think when you think about unique experiences, the human brain remembers moments differently. So like peak and theory, I think even though we're an online learning platform, it's not just a very passive experience where you're watching it on your own. Understanding the peak and theory, what we tend to do with every class launch or unique experience is actually have a launch party where before you start like watching courses and videos, you actually get to meet the person that created the class and have a showcase of why they have curated this knowledge with like niche insights. So that's actually much more meaningful. Like I guess the differentiator between that and perhaps like a competitor like masterclass where you would watch Gordon Ramsay cook, but could you ask Gordon Ramsay about like how the secrets behind how he cooks? But I mean, that's something that is quite meaningful and something we really believe in, which is education. Education should be accessible. Not everyone can pay like a couple $1,000 to go to university, but if you think about what university is meant to enable, which is for some people a meaningful way to get a job. If you are able to go through a crash course and build something, in 7 days you'll get hired, and that's what we believe in, and that comes from a combination of knowledge and opportunities. So knowledge in terms of curated insights from the classes, opportunities in the ability to pitch what you've put together. So our classes are very output driven. If you attended a class on entrepreneurship, at the end of it you'll put together a pitch deck and perhaps have an opportunity to share that with the person who shared with you his book. So we have that with like a class by founder of Oyo, Ravi Shankar, and there's similar things with people who have built like metaverse projects, and something that we believe in. So unique experiences right now, even though we're online, it's not yet messaged in personalization, but we really anchor much more on what that means for a user, both in the ability to ask an educator a specific reference to their context, as well as the ability to translate what they've produced with their knowledge into, either a job, an opportunity, or a connection, which is, I think, the most enriching part about marketing, right? What it resonates with and what it means to a person. So yeah, that's what it means to us at Nas Academy.
Awesome. So you're creating a bit of an augmentation around your offering from that perspective.
Yes. So the reason why that matters a lot is also because of, the multiplier of a unique experience like that ability for maybe the top student of that cohort to pitch to Rajesh Agarwal for what costs in India maybe $29 is like an unheard of opportunity. Could they get into a room with like a billionaire? No. But will they definitely share that online? I sure would, right? So I think we really anchor on not all moments are created equal, and double downing on the moments that matter and framing it, especially with our obviously marketing, which is like the real reason why you buy this class is not just because you want to learn how to create a pitch deck. That's essentially what you create. You join the class because you want to create a successful business, and any businessman knows that's a function of opportunity, right timing and right people. So yeah, that's something that we think a lot about.
Interesting. Very different take on how you're delivering personalization. Awesome. Ravi, what's your journey looking like at Carsome? How are you shaping things up?
So, I'm pretty new to the car industry, actually. So, I only learned to drive a car a couple of years ago. So, trying to figure out the industry was tough. One of the unique experiences I have about customer experiences is so I joined, and then I'm going around and telling people that we are really constant car. We'll actually deliver the car right to your doorstep. So I've asked the team to actually capture the moment of that, right? And the team came back and said, "Oh, we can't. It's been 3 weeks and we couldn't get it." So the unique insight is people still like to come and pick up the car at our experience centers. They don't like to get it delivered at home, right? So they want the experience of taking a picture with the car and finding the right time and the convenient day for them to have that peace of mind and having that experience, right? So and we started tailoring those experiences at the center, right? So in a way, what we're trying to do is create the experience of buying a used car. But buying a used car is always stressful, right? First thing you think about is not really what kind of car you want to buy. It's about who should I talk to, which dealer, is there anyone that I know who's good at cars, right? And that can advise me on this. So what we're going to do is, okay, I want to be that trusted brand for you on top of your mind when you think about a used car. And giving that experience for someone who want to buy that car is crucial because brands get built by sharing those experiences with others, right? So in terms of that, delivering those messages across the journey, because even when you decide to buy a car, there are multiple steps like loan and all that. So you need constant communications across multiple different channels. So I don't think we're 100% there yet, but we're trying to integrate a lot of online and offline systems, including the bank systems, to give the constant communications for them to have that peace of mind and to create experience, right? So I've done a lot of mystery shopping for myself to understand the journey, I mean, you don't really buy a car every day. So I want to understand that and create an experience for everyone, right? So yeah, still at the learning stage, I would say.
Interesting. And I'll always, whenever I buy a car, go to the showroom, pick up one, because this small story digressing from here. One of my first cars, a major European brand. As a kid, I was always dreaming of buying that car. Get to the showroom, it's a brand new car. Drive the car out of the showroom and it starts making some noise, and it has to go into the workshop for a month. That was my first experience. So I'll always pick up the car and person never get it.
You can buy Carsome, we have 5 money back guarantee. No questions asked.
But your space, Ravi, can get to heavy transaction. You buy a second-hand car, you have a budget, you have certain requirements, you apply for it when you get the car. How do you learn more about your customers, and how do you change that experience for them? Is there something that you can share?
So definitely, right. So we center the way we do business into 3 things, right? The trust, transparency, and choice. So we always think in these 3 buckets, because you need to trust a brand to actually buy a high value item from you, and it is known that the used car industry is not so transparent. So we wanted to change that, and then usually there isn't a lot of choice when you go to a specific dealer. We have like 20 cars, 30 cars and stuff, but we have a huge selection of about 1,000 and country, right? So understanding that customer is crucial, right? So I mean, being honest, it's a new industry. We are still trying to understand our customer. We've done a lot of researches. We've done a lot of surveys. Now we're doing something called voice of customers at the centers. So this is my team doing it, and then they cater the learnings to everyone later. And the other way where we get a lot of information is through mystery shoppings, right? I make sure most teams go through that process and understand what's the pain points, right? So it's predominantly offline at this point because the number of transactions are low and that sample size is much smaller for you to get to a conclusion of okay, this is the behavior that we should go and we should tailor the business accordingly. Yeah.
I think everything that you do needs to build that trust with the customer, and that's what will make the final difference. Right? Yeah. Interesting. Bibaswan, properties.
Yeah,
expensive ones.
Yeah, exactly what Ravi is saying, right? So imagine if you're researching cars, like what do you do with properties? So that's the main thing that I've learned over my stint with Property Group. I come from e-commerce-ish kind of companies, So again, like you're trying to book a $10 cab, you decide at the moment it's nothing, right? Then what difference will it make? Unless you're part of a very select group of people who can make those $1 million decisions in a matter of minutes, most people take months leading up to years. So what I have realized is the transactions in the property market are very infrequent for obvious reasons. But the research phase, when a person is actually hunting for that right one, it's insane. The frequency you are possessed with it, right? So you come back like 10 times in a day at different filters. Where is my child's school? Where is my office? So a bunch of different. So the search patterns leading up to that actual decision, it starts off very broad, and we have data to like show that. So a person when he is just in the market starting off his search, it's fairly broad, and then that intent gets really qualified and like focuses on specific 2-3 things, and then they get like at that point that they desire a few things, right? I'm fixated on this particular condo, or I really like these 2-3 listings that I want to go after, right? So and then repeatedly visiting, inquiring, all of that. So our personalization approach is to basically, we have this long horizon, like years. The quickest ones are probably 6, 7, 8 months for the buying transactions. For the longer ones, it can be more than 1.5, 2 years or more. So we can see it ramping up, and as it ramps up, we have to tailor our approach accordingly. So that can be the communication frequency. So if you have just purchased an apartment, I don't need to pester you with unnecessary calls. It's just spam, right? So, but when we know that you are hot in the market and you need the right information to assist you in that decision, or to just get to know that something that you are looking for has just come on the market, that is where we focus our efforts on, to really know at what stage of that decision-making cycle the consumer is on, and tailor the approach accordingly. So that's the high level that we need to do.
You also look after the B2B side?
Yes, I do. So my role is across, actually there's a fintech part of it, which is also very interesting because the financing requirements are at a very later stage.
Correct.
So, but to answer your question, I do look at agents and developers, so it's a very complicated marketplace.
Correct. Property group definitely has become a bit more complex from where it started, and it's been a great journey though, so it's a good success story for the region, some great stuff right there. I want to go back to Diane because another friend of mine, Sean, earlier came on board and spoke about this Web 3.0. I meet a lot of people who are still figuring out Web 2.0. I'm probably, like Saurabh mentioned, aging a bit, so I need to catch up on Web 3.0 as well. Nas Academy has a lot of different courses. And before we get to the question, how many people are actively into crypto? Fair bit, all right. So the Nas Academy has a large number of courses, of course, a lot around crypto, NFTs, etc. How do you segment? Because the kind of audience who wants to look at this course is a very different audience than what we're used to. How do you manage this segmentation and this over?
It's a great question. I think it's as simple as remembering people's preference and a point of time where they give us the content details. On our site, that's as simple as remembering express intent, whether or not they've added something to cart. We also have like something like a class recommender, where people were like, I think you're an interesting website, I don't really know what I'm looking for. So there's like a survey, what are you interested in doing? Would you call yourself a beginner? And at the end of it, we give them a class recommendation. So the way that we segment our customers, B2B content creation, and we have newsletters of that. In the past, the bulk of our base was people who wanted to learn skill sets with like short form video content, how to become a YouTuber, how do you script edit, what's the difference between that for travel versus like a travel vlog versus like tech reviews. Obviously that audience is very, very different from someone who wants to learn how to invest in NFTs, like from the content they want to hear and the news that they want to hear in the space. And so what we do is we segment out the user base of people who are interested in content creation, business and entrepreneurship, and crypto NFTs. We just have 3 broad buckets where every week we have like more of like content newsletters where we curate from the most interesting things that happen in the space. It's really hard for anyone to truly say that they're expert in crypto NFTs. Even the people who are like teaching classes say that I don't dare say that this is the best class. The modifier, they're very conservative with that because the space moves so quickly, and what would have been a good investment today might have experienced like, a scandal and hack tomorrow, and it's a very fast-moving space. It's the early days, but because of that, I think giving value up front is something that's really important. And so remembering what people prefer and understanding that there is increasingly an overlap between the space of content creation. YouTube now is building up, I think, the NFT arms to enable content creators to make their YouTube videos an NFT. Because so much of internet culture is based on like memes and what's memorable, right, and a reference. That's the whole concept as to why equity or like brand equity sits as like P&L line, because there's something intangible that sits in consumers' memory, right? So understanding that segment allows us to write content for why beginner content creators should really care about understanding crypto NFTs, because it ultimately benefits them. The revenue share you could get from OpenSea is much higher than the amount you make off YouTube. It's like, I think 50-50, but OpenSea you get like, I think if I'm not wrong, 90. OpenSea only takes 2% of the transaction value, 2 to 3%. So the remaining goes back to the creator. So if you guys are creators in the room, you should be in.
I was just going to ask if you have a coupon code for most of the crowd. We can come up one during lunch.
Yeah. So if you're keen to learn about space, like, I think the benefit of what we're trying to do is to make it understandable. And as entertaining as watching a TikTok, right? So our roots come from content creation. We're trying to make something super pros driven and very jargony that sits in like, Discord channels and Twitter threads, accessible to the everyday person who has a full-time job, who maybe just has like half an hour a day to just watch a little bit of like content and have frameworks to figure out how to, diversify their investments and to do so in an educated way. That's just really important.
I downloaded it, kind of speak to anyone about crypto. I download the app. I have my finger almost on the buy button, but I don't do it. So I'll definitely take a course because I'm still lacking confidence in trading. But it's an interesting space for you, and then you're trying to educate people who come from that sort of expectation. They want a very different experience. So some great learnings there. I think the next thing that I want to really touch upon a bit is also around metrics and insights. Another area where I feel there's a lot more information that can be shared in terms of how people are doing it in different aspects and people can learn from it. Because there's always confusion because everything's measurable. Let's just go bananas and start measuring. And eventually, I don't think those reports or those insights are being then used to make any changes. They're being done in silos. So, Ravi, in your case, how are you bridging this gap? I know in the past also you have had a number of systems that you have used, and then you try to come with a common denominator about the customer, and then be able to utilize that insight and do something about it. So, if you can throw some light on how best you achieve this, whether here or generally speaking in your experience, that would be very useful for the audience.
Sure. Just to give some context, I worked in average 5 years before joining Carsome. One thing we always tend to overlook is the amount of behavioral data that we have on the customer. I should think about it, and for any business, on average, the conversion rate, the ultimate conversion rate is about 5%, 2% sometimes, right? So we tend to focus on a lot more on the transactive users who pass the barrier of the conversion rate, and the 97% or 90% of the users who behave on the asset, your web or app, we don't really focus on that, right? So that's where the importance of behavior data comes in, right? And that's how you look at the search patterns, where the research phase, why they dropped off, at what point they dropped off. So I tend to generally focus more on the behavior data because transactions done, like okay, we already sold, right? So what to analyze? Right? So we can analyze it later after a month or a year, but how can we improve and the behavior of the users, measure the behavior of the users and improve their experience, right? So even at Carsome, we have a bunch of different business models, right? So we actually buy cars from consumers and people always misunderstand Carsome is a listing platform. It's not actually. They come to us with the car and then we pay them immediately and take the car and they take it, grab home, right? So, and then they also buy cars from us. And we also have a Carsome capital arm where they kind of try to get a pre-up loan and a pre-approved loan. So there are different research phases and then different stages of the journey. And I have a measurement framework for each of those businesses. And I usually don't give a lot of Google Analytics access to a lot of people. I tend to create dashboards that each team should look at. And most of the times it's business metrics and behavior metrics, not really the transactional metrics. Right? So I think it kind of starts from behavior, right? So it's a bit counterintuitive when I don't give the visibility of how many transactions happen because it happened, right? So try to focus on this measurement framework where your job is to improve this conversion rate, which is from third step to fourth step, right? So that's how I kind of think about it. In a high frequency business and even in a low frequency business right now. Yeah.
And do you also have anything to measure customer satisfaction, anything different that you're doing?
So yeah, we do have a CX platform, we have an NPS services app. What we're trying to do is put up a QR codes in our experience and inspection centers to tie back the customer experience. we do and measure all that across.
Interesting. Bibaswan, how do you do things differently? And maybe you can also share with us what are your North Star metrics for B2C versus B2B?
See, B2C is, so B2B is more straightforward because there are hard metrics at the end of it. We have a full closed loop when a transaction happens, people paying us money, subscription, so I'll just talk about B2C because over there our approach is probably a little interesting for the group here. So we look at it that, we are a marketplace which is aiding a property search, right? So it's not good if a consumer is coming back to us for too long than what we would expect them to spend on the search. So that would represent a failure of the marketplace. So we have something called as a match rate, which is effectively the number of listings that we feel is, again, this is a lot of data and research that has come up, that a consumer should go through a certain number of listings before they have at least their first inquiry. So basically they are finding something that they like. If that is getting tested, that means that there are fundamental elements of the marketplace which are not working the way it is supposed to. So again, that's kind of like at the end of it. So that's what we really monitor like a hawk and try to optimize for. And again, there are elements of trust, listing quality, bunch of different things. Do you have nice photographs? Is the listing a valid listing? Is the information correct? Right? Do you have all the metadata that is needed for a consumer to feel confident to put in an inquiry that this probably can solve what I'm looking for? So that's at the end of it. But leading up to it, this is at the end of the day a very outcome metric. So again, you cannot give this to teams like optimize for match rate. They say what the hell is this? So to break that down, we get to more realistic levels like recommendation quality, what kind of click-through rates are you getting to get that recommendation to generate traffic on the platform, and even beyond that, are you getting enough eyeballs and exposure for the people who are really in that. What I spoke about in that specific stage of their intent where they are really looking for property. So are you getting the information in front of the relevant people? Is the information itself something that is click-worthy and helpful for the consumer at that stage? And once they get to the platform, do they have all the information that they need in the listing itself for them to feel confident to inquire? And if all these three things work together, we will get the right match rate that we are looking for on the consumer side. So something like that is the process that we follow.
It sounds a bit complicated for people to do. Do you use some sort of algorithms to make this happen, like predictions?
Yeah, we do. So see, I think if you look at it at a building block level for a marketer or a product manager to optimize for some of the things in the funnel, it's not very complicated. So you are optimizing for funnel problems. If somebody is getting to the listing page, do they click on the inquire button or is there a bounce at that stage? So at these levels, it's not complicated. Where it does get complicated is when we come up with the match rate for the month. And that's where we look at a lot of repeat visitors, there's a bunch of anonymous traffic, a lot of things happening, and we use, again, a lot of fancy tools in our stack to get that done, along with a bunch of in-house algos that we have.
Yeah. Perfect. Maybe I'd just like to also understand why you all have been achieving things in your own ways. You all must be facing some challenges. What are those top one or two challenges that come to your mind that you are still trying to accomplish or get over?
Okay, I'll start. So I think the biggest challenge that I have faced is that with a lot of data, there's a lot of complacency, I feel, right? So because we are able to capture so much, and almost everybody does it, right? So we have a lot of data at our disposal. So we are cutting corners in the insight process. So I'll explain what I'm trying to say. So typically, insights are comprised of observations about the user, along with a very decent understanding of why we are having that observation. So what happens now, and I've faced this in my team and myself, that once I look at the data and find out a certain segment of users is behaving in a certain way, I'm going to make some assumptions about why that is happening. And a more traditional insight validation process would involve experimentation, would involve a lot of qualitative feedback to really validate that assumption is correct, right? Before we go with a mass market feature launch or a mass market campaign. But nowadays, I think we look at our assumptions and this is it, right? I think this is why it's happening, so let's just launch the campaign, we'll think about it later. So, and hence there are these issues that keep cropping up, that people are not happy with some campaigns they have received or some of the features. one example of a company which does this really well, I feel, is YouTube. So you see in the recommendation feed, they have these small snippets that come up, is this recommendation valid for you? To be very fair, YouTube doesn't need to do that. Imagine the amount of clickstream data YouTube already has in views, likes, everything. So why are they asking us? What YouTube wants to know is the context of that recommendation, correct? So they are actually going from observation to actually, because their algos have said that this is a good recommendation, but they still want to validate whether the algo is not missing a particular context. I think that's the challenge that I face. I have a lot of data at my disposal. I can create segments very easily. And then what do I do to that segment is sometimes becomes a guess on my part. I would want to be more methodical in validating whether my guess is correct or I'm just totally imagining things in my head. So that's the challenge.
Correct. And I mean, you've put it really well. And it's all about timing, right? You can have endless time of assessing and getting insights, but eventually marketing is all about timing, so you've got to be able to get it right. You've put the challenge, very thought out way, and I think I keep hearing those when I speak to a lot of brands. They're still in that process of trying to make this happen. Ravi, in your case?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the biggest challenge that I have at this point is localization. So, localization is not just in terms of marketing, right? It's just in terms of the product itself. For example, the way people shop cars in Thailand and Indonesia are completely different, right? So in Indonesia, they prefer the absolute amount of the car to be upfront. In Malaysia, they look at the amount of monthly installment to pay, right? And the language itself is different, the jargon itself is different. So localizing the product and marketing communications is one of the biggest challenges, and it goes across the messaging attributes. Thailand is predominantly line dominated, right? So and WhatsApp in other two countries. So localizing the product, localizing the communications is the biggest challenge. I mean, we have a good amount of data that kind of helps us to improve the product a bit. But again, that's why we use behavior data a lot more to kind of take those decisions, right? For example, people who engage more with the loan calculator in Thailand don't really tend to buy, right? But it's completely different in Malaysia, right? So in Thailand, they care more about the inspection report, the detailed inspection report of the car and the features of the car a lot more. So localizing that product is always a challenge because we're in the learning phase and we're new to the industry. It's not like any other car brand where you just have one brand and 4 or 5 models. We have about 30 brands and thousands of cars. So yeah, that's the challenge that I have.
A lot of offline data.
Oh, a lot. Because generally, in most of the e-commerces, the transaction is complete online.
Correct.
You fulfill the transaction offline.
Correct.
Whereas the transaction gets initiated online. It fulfills offline because there are a lot of financial issues involved in it. So combining that, the test drive at experience centers, the inspections at the inspection centers, combining all that to a customer, it's impossible to do or build something in-house. Right? You need a lot of tech stack to kind of combine all that.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. Diane, top challenges for you?
Sure, appreciate it. I think the interesting part about Nas Academy as an edtech platform is that I guess there are some learnings from a traditional e-commerce marketplace playbook that you can adapt, but I suppose there's one key difference, which is that because a lot of the people who are teaching classes themselves are in themselves like brands with a huge following, the launches you have with them when they post say a YouTube video about how they have a new course that launches can result in a huge amount of traffic coming to your site, and not all fans of a content creator design themselves to be content creators. They're just super fans. So there could be an element of them who buy it because of access, right? Ability to meet the person they look up to and take a subsegment of the class. And then some people who themselves follow perhaps a bit more like YouTubers, how-to videos, who want to create something and therefore value the class. So some of the challenges we have, if I were to, is to think through which aspects of the e-commerce playbook you can adapt, and how do you also have like negative intent filters. So if, you know, in traditional e-commerce, it's like you would have your retargeting campaigns, right? So your abandoned carts and like how you plug that back into your ad tech stack, so that if added to cart doesn't check out, you can give them reasons why this class is interesting, what people have gone on to do. But you could burn a lot of money if you don't really think through who are more of like browsers or freeloaders or people who are not so interested. So that's number one. Number two is also the localization. For Nas Academy, our two biggest markets, similar to any other tech platform in the world, is the US for revenue and India for like number of users who are interested in learning online. And the patterns in how they want to consume content and how they want to read updates from the brand is very different. So we see emails is a lot higher, SMS much bigger in the US, but more mobile messaging, WhatsApp, free workshops is an important way to engage people in developing markets, as a way for them to get teasers, to understand the credentials and the kind of tips as teasers for what they would get if they were to buy the whole class. So yeah, localization and figuring out sizing of the opportunity is also something that's, that's important. That's a bit of a challenge because we're launching even as we're building a system for discovery. So I think these are the top two challenges. And then the third one is, I think if you think about the challenge of personalization in an earlier stage startup, is that the teams are usually smaller, so justifying engineering time to add additional data pipelines needs to come with like a dollar value or expected value. So balancing out what you do manually to see what could be potential upside from revenue is something that I try to balance between what I put into a product ask and thinking about flexible enough system that will work not just for your product currently today, but what you see as a revenue one in terms of skill set and channel. So yeah, those are the three things that are both the challenges as well as the opportunities.
Interesting bunch of challenges for you as well. Thanks so much for sharing. I'd like to spare some time for any questions from the audience. Anyone? If not, then yes, please. Can you give your mic here?
Check, and you mentioned there's no transaction fee. So can you explain how you survive if there's no transaction fee? And second question is, do you do regional transaction? If somebody from Thailand wants to sell a car to Singapore, is it possible to write on your platform?
So unfortunately, it's not regional because there are global regulations that are there. I'm not really quite sure about the transaction fee that you mentioned. So basically, when we buy cars from consumers, we pay you immediately, and then we again take the risk of listing that in a platform where actively thousands of dealers are bidding on that car. Right? So as a consumer, you have a choice to accept our offer and sell your car immediately, or we can list your car for you to check how much the bidding price is going to be. So for that, we don't really have a transaction fee for that, right? So it's just a service that we are offering. But because dealers are also our consumers, right? So yeah.
Okay, can I ask the question?
Sorry.
Can someone do trading on your platform? If you got contact and network with car dealers, and then, or companies that are selling fleet of cars, is it possible to make use of your platform? make everything out.
Also, the platform is not open for public yet. So if the companies want to sell cars, they'll buy them for public and then we'll put it in the platform. So the tech is independent. I'm not sure if I answered the question.
I think that's, you have some conversations for lunch lined up. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question here.
Personalization.
Just the same
Oh, yes.
person. Yeah. So, you take how long for people to buy an idea? Then what's your approach? What's your journey of web platform?
Sorry,
It takes how long for the people, the user, to buy your ideas? And what's your journey? Then how are you going to lose the user to come to the platform?
So, I'm not sure if you talk about the sell side or the buy side of the business. So you're trying to sell a car to us or you're trying to buy a car from us?
Yeah, both.
Okay. So if someone is trying to sell a car, it's immediate. You can just drop off the car, we'll transfer the money to your bank account, you can walk away. If they want to buy a car, you can complete the transaction online, get the car delivered to your doorstep. But it depends on whether you want to go with a loan process or you want to get paid by cash. Yeah. But generally, our acquisition channels are used come to us direct. Yeah.
Actually, this is not my question. My question is, how are you going to attract the user to use your platform? How are you persuade them to buy?
So it's simple marketing, right? So we are a brand like an e-commerce brand. So we use all sort of acquisition channels, online and offline, to attract consumers. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ravi. I think we should wind this interesting conversation up. Ravi is going to be around, so is Diane and Bibaswan, and you can talk to them over lunch. They of course have a lot of experience in their own fields, and they can share a lot of insights. It's always great having a conversation with them. And thank you once again for taking the time out, for sharing your insights, for sharing your experiences, and it was a pleasure having you here.